Let's talk about one of the stories that people had heard was that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, was slow to help people. What did you see on the ground?
Well, you can get me really fired up with this one. I'm just going to cry. Oh, no, I'm not going to cry anymore. But you can get me really fired up with this one. So it took 3 to 4 weeks for FEMA to actually hit the ground. And that's so frustrating to me when you go into these communities and the things that people aren't talking about, the devastation. And it's they say, oh, well, we lost, a couple hundred people. It's a lot more than that. Thankfully, I did not have to witness some of the things that some of my friends seen, but some of my friends, oh my goodness, the horrific things that they actually witnessed with their own eyes are things that people have nightmares about.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential. And here's your host, Jeff Crank.
Well, thank you for being with us for another episode of American Potential. On this show, we share a lot of stories of people that are making a difference in their state or in their community. Now, today's episode isn't just about our guest and her efforts. It's also about how communities come together when a disaster hits. At the end of September, Hurricane Helen left a path of destruction from Florida to Southwest Virginia, which will forever change some communities. When the storm slammed into North Carolina, it destroyed roads and bridges, many of which were lifelines for some people. Now, seeing the impact of this devastation, many citizens did what they do best, and they came together to help their fellow Americans in need. People from all over the country pitched in, gathering supplies and rolling up their sleeves to help those who had lost everything. Because entire areas were cut off from supplies, people didn't wait around for someone else to fix it. They got to work, and they figured out how to get supplies into those isolated areas. Before private air support even arrived, our guest packed up her vehicle with donations and, with the help of a friend, headed straight to a town that needed help. I want to welcome Tonya Damron to the podcast to share her story on the relief efforts she's been a part of. Tonya, thanks for being with us.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be the voice for North Carolina, even if it's just a small voice. It's such an honor.
Well, look, you've been doing nonprofit work for, I guess, 11 years now. Where does your heart for helping other people come from? And what's some of the work that you've done in the past?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a professional photographer by trade, and I've been doing that for 17 years. And when I hit year 11, well, actually, we'll back that up, year 6, which would make it year 11 now, in my business, I was actually in Africa on my second humanitarian trip as a photographer. And I was sitting in bed and I was looking at all these photos of lions and all these really cool things that I had never witnessed in my entire life. And I was like, oh man, I am good. Like, I am good. This is amazing. I literally heard the audible voice, well, an internal voice of the Lord that said, hey, no, I am good. You're not good. I am good. And I've given you this talent. And sorry, I still get emotional. And it's to use for the kingdom. And I was like, okay, all right. And from that moment on, it literally changed my entire life. And so here we are, 5 continents and 50 some countries later, and doing humanitarian work. And so just recently with the hurricane, that was my first time, other than a few random things, I was able to do a large effort on my own here in the States. And from that, I was like, I just don't see anyone who sees an issue and doesn't help. So I think for me, growing up in rural Appalachia myself, and I grew up very poor. But the odd thing is we didn't know we were poor, right? Everybody around us is in the same scenario. And I grew up, and thank goodness, I became pretty successful. Of course, all due to God and amazing clients. And from there, I just think that if you have the resources to help people, you should. And it doesn't take money. That's the amazing thing. It sometimes is just your time. So that's kind of where everything stems from.
Well, I love how you give glory to God, first of all. And it sounds like that's your passion, that you found your purpose in life, and you believe and you know that he gave you these talents, and they're on loan from him. So you want to use them for his purpose, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Let's talk about, I want to talk about some of the devastation you've seen, first of all, through this, for Americans that maybe don't live in the states that were affected by this hurricane. Talk about what you've seen. I mean, it really has been an incredibly devastating hurricane that hit, and it really affected a large swath of those states, didn't it?
Yes. So we were in day 3. We were actually boots on the ground, and I didn't know what to expect. The closest place that was hit is only about 45 minutes from me, which is on the interstate, actually probably even 30, because Newport, Tennessee was hit. And then, of course, the interstate is still shut down, and it'll be shut down for a while, Interstate 40, connecting us to Asheville. And I was actually in Burnsville, probably day 3, with a friend. She grew up there, met her there, took a truckload of supplies. The roads had just opened up. And I didn't know what to expect, because you see things on TV, but it's hard to imagine that in real life. So you're going in, you get off the interstate, and when you get off the interstate, it literally looked like a war zone. That's the only thing I can compare it to. There were army tanks and trucks and men and women in uniform, and there were fires everywhere where they were burning the debris, and there were trees twisted and homes completely destroyed where roofs were laying in the middle of, random places. And there was a part on I-26 that was completely shut down, and we actually got to drive on that. And it was spooky. There was literally no one on the interstate. And I don't know about you, but I've never been on an interstate where there was not one single car. Mm-hmm. And on that interstate, there were thousands of trees twisted and just laying all over the interstate, which was insane, because you're like, how did these trees even get here? And then you realize that the river was actually up on the interstate itself. And what part that the river didn't get on the interstate, it was actually the trees coming down from the mountains from the mudslides. So we lost service probably right at the interstate. And so for a whole hour, we drove into Burnsville with no service on our cell phones. We had no clue what to expect. Roads were washed out from, like I said, the river, the creeks, the mudslides. And the closer you got, it was just insane, because, like I said, the roads had just opened up. And the amazing thing is that you started seeing all of these vehicles with supplies, and it was vehicles from all over the United States, not just Tennessee, not just North Carolina. And I think, to me, that was the most amazing thing to see, was that it was everybody helping. And the thing was, it was not the government that was there. It was our neighbors.
Yeah. Well, and I want to get more to this response, but let me ask you this. You've worked with nonprofits, but you decided to start your own nonprofit. What's the name of your new nonprofit, and what are you going to focus on?
Yeah, so the name of my new nonprofit is Project 320, and that actually comes from Ephesians 3:20, where it says that he is able to do more than what we could ever even imagine, and exceeding, what we can even imagine. So that's the name of the nonprofit. We're going through the process of all the legalities to get all that set up. But yeah, that's what the name of it is. And yeah, so our focus will be, of course, international and local. I've done so many things internationally that will always be the core of my heart. You can't go into these third world countries, and we see things horrible here, but it is nothing compared to some of the third world countries. But we will always partner with locals as well to serve where there's a need.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about the area that was hit. But as you were going to that area, let's talk about the first place you went, and the people that you went there to help. What did you see on your way there? You talked a little bit about the trees and those sorts of things, but kind of describe a little bit more about where you went first and what you saw.
Yeah. So like I said, once we got off the interstate, we were headed to Burnsville, North Carolina, and that's in Yancey County. And like I said, the river had literally come up so high that it had started basically creating a new path for itself. So the place where the river was is not anymore, and it's wider, or the place where it was is now no longer. And now it's created its own path, which is so insane to see. And like I said, there's houses that were there that are not there anymore. Roads completely washed out to where people couldn't even get access to. So we were actually taking side-by-sides up to rescue these people, to get them out, getting them out on foot. Local fire and rescue was there to help as well. But it literally, like I said, the best way I could describe it is a war zone. Something that you would see off of some kind of crazy sci-fi movie. It was literally something that I had never experienced in my life before. Water towers literally completely like rooted up and threw down miles away where it wasn't anymore. School buses flipped up on their sides. And we actually, like I said, we got to see a lot of fire and rescue, a lot of air rescue going on. And it was weird because you could continually hear the air rescue and the helicopters and things going on. And it was almost a very eerie feeling because in your day-to-day life, you don't hear those things. You don't see those things. And so when I came back home that night and things are actually quiet, it was almost weird because it was so much commotion that day and so much traffic and so many people just on foot, just helping out each other. So there was a lot of devastation for sure, but I also got to see a lot of hope. And I think that is like the driving force behind anything that I do is like, yeah, there's devastation, but there's also hope. And I think that's the silver lining in it all.
Right. Now, there's one little town that you've become attached to.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this little town.
So on probably day 5, I had a friend and she went to this little town where they were hiking in to take supplies. And it's called Barnardsville. I butchered the name forever because it does not look like it sounds. It looks like Bernardsville, but all the locals say I was saying it wrong. It's Barnardsville. And she was telling me about these people. And she said, Tonya, you've got to go. And I was like, well, you know, what's different there than any other place that I'm going to serve? Because everything is devastated right now and everybody needs something. And she said, the people, you will fall in love with the people. And she told me this story about these 3 little kids that she found, and they were actually playing outside of their camper and they did not have clothes on. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I could deal with that. She said, we went, we got them some clothes. And she said, we just started talking to the people. And she said, they are just amazing. So I was like, all right, done deal. I'm going to go. So got some more donations, loaded up. We went. And the people there, when I got out of the vehicle, the people there, I said, this looks like home. And so for me,
Okay.
for me, home, give me just a minute. Sorry.
Sure.
For me, home is in Eastern Kentucky. And it's absolutely beautiful. And the people are amazing. Sorry.
That's okay. It's all right.
And so I got out of the car and, you're in the middle of the mountains and it's beautiful. And, random strangers come and they're coming to help, unload your car. And you just start talking to these people and you realize that it looks like home. sorry, it looks like home. It feels like home. And that, I think, is the thing that attracted me, to these people, is it was just very familiar. But then after that, then you start getting to know people and their personalities, and you start to hear their stories. And then from there, I was like, yeah, people can go wherever else and help, but I'm going to continue to go back to this place. So with that being said, we have met some amazing, amazing people that will definitely be lifelong friends because of the experiences that I've had there.
Yeah. Wow. And that's very powerful. And I want people to understand the passion, the emotion that you have in your voice is what I can only describe as the difference between people who help because they want to help and sort of the government coming in to help. Nothing wrong with people. They're well-intentioned, people who are work in a federal bureaucracy or a emergency management agency. They're there. They're many times experts, but they don't have this kind of passion. They don't have this kind of emotion, I think, behind them in the way that they're doing it. You're doing this not to get paid. You're not doing this because it's your job. You're doing this because of that emotion is driving you to do it. And that's something that is just an intangible that I think people sometimes forget. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I always say that there's two things. You can have an opinion or you can have a passion. And there is a difference between the two. People can look on, TikTok and the internet and all those things, and they can have opinions about politics and what the government should be doing and what people should not be doing. And opinions are fine. We all have opinions. But there is a difference between an opinion and a passion, because a passion will make you go, will make you do the things that you thought you could never do, to rally the troops. And I think that you're right. That's the difference between an opinion and a passion. Is the passion makes you go. It doesn't let you just sit on your behind. It makes you go and do the things. And it's amazing that other people, even if they can't go or maybe they can't give, they have that passion to be, just to support you in your endeavors. And so with that being said, we have literally had so many people. We've raised over $10,000 in probably just a few short weeks. We've been able to donate 6 campers. And the crazy thing is, these campers are not coming from another organization. These are people that say, hey, Tonya, I've got this camper that I've not used in a year. We just can't let it sit there. Can someone use this? And we've had, very basic campers to things that literally, we had someone reach out and they had almost $100,000 value camper, and they were using it. And they were like, we just feel like God said to give this to you. Where do I need to take it? And they were literally on the road the next day from Georgia, dropping it off at someone's house. And I have an amazing story about that particular camper and the family that got that camper.
Yeah. Well, let's do that now. Tell us that story about the family that got the camper. And then I want to ask you just about some of the people you've been able to help. So start with that one.
Yeah. So the people who got that particular camper, there was a lady named Amy, and she donated it. And oddly enough, she owns a wedding venue in Georgia. And she took it to a family, my people in Barnardsville. So I've been working with Barnardsville, like I said, but particularly with Big Ivy Community Center. And I got with them and they said, hey, we actually have this lady. She's well known in the community. And let me tell you a little bit about her story. So I was like, sure, let's go. So there's a lady, her name is Tammy, and her husband, David. And they have a son or son-in-law and a daughter that was actually lost in the flood. And what had happened is their granddaughter had went to church with their grandparents that night. And she wanted to go home with the grandparents. And so, of course, her parents said, sure. So they asked the parents, hey, will you come, and stay with us tonight? The storms are going to be bad. And the parents were like, hey, no, we actually need to go home and check on the house, but she can go with you guys. So they let her go. They went home to check on the house itself. The hurricane hit that night and the floodwaters came. And Stephen and Elena is the people that lost their lives in the flood themselves. They found Stephen and this is insane, they found Stephen's body 90 miles away from his house about a week and a half later. They have still yet to recover Elena's body, so there is still efforts with that. And so Tammy and David, they were living in a trailer or a mobile home, and it had already been damaged by a hailstorm like earlier on in the year. And when the flood came and the damage and the hurricane, their roof started leaking. Their floor, of course, got wet because in a mobile home, those things, even if they were more sturdy, there's only so much that your home can endure as far as water damage goes. And so their floor had started falling through, their roof had started falling through. Now they have this little granddaughter that they're sharing custody with the other grandparents they're trying to raise and take care of. And that's not a suitable environment. So then what happens is mold starts setting in, right? Within a few days, as soon as the water goes, if you don't rip out sheetrock, if you don't rip out insulation, mold will start to grow. And so that becomes very unsafe very fast. And so we were actually able to take them a camper, give them some extra supplies they didn't maybe have at the community center, and get them in a warm, safe environment so they could actually grieve a little bit and process, what's next. And so for me, that's probably one of my favorite stories, but I have story after story of people that we've been helping, including a pretty insane one that we helped yesterday.
Yeah. Is this the father?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about that? I mean, you've been in the area for a while, but you're still learning about people who are in need. Talk about the father you recently learned about.
Yeah. So yesterday we delivered a camper to a single dad. He has a 10-year-old kid with severe autism. She's nonverbal, and she also has a heart condition. He also has an 18-year-old son that's in college. And we heard about him through another nonprofit, and we're like, hey, we have a camper. We don't have anybody at this moment, in Barnesville that we can give this to. Everybody seems to be taken care of in some kind of at least temporary situation, but we can't just let this, sit there. And so we reached out to a few nonprofits, and we came in contact with Jeffrey, and they were like, hey, Jeffrey's neighbor told us that he is living in a tent with his kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, please connect us. So they connected us. We immediately took the camper that we had on hand with some additional supplies to his place. And his place is outside of Asheville, right outside of Asheville. And I hadn't been that far yet, which is about 3 hours from Knoxville where we live, or where I live. And we pull up, and there's literally a whole campsite set up in front of the trailer that he had. And what had happened, a tree had fell on his house. And because the tree had fell on his house and there was so much rain that night, that instead of the flood coming up into his house, the rain actually filled up his house the opposite way. And there was nowhere to go but all of that to seep through into, basically through the flooring, which then his fridge fell through the floor. When the power finally came back on, it exploded every appliance that the guy had. So that is just one issue after another that this has caused. And there are even people that didn't even get hit by the hurricane or the flood itself, but that still will not have power or water for the next 4 months. They're in the community, but they were safe. And now, it's getting cold, and I couldn't imagine living like that. And I know that I understand that power and water is a blessing, right? It is a necessity. I understand that, but it's also a blessing compared to some of the places that I see in third world countries that they've never had running water or they've never had power. But to have it and then all of a sudden not have it with maybe pre-existing medical issues, it doesn't. This hurricane did not discriminate anyone. And even if it didn't hit their house, a lot of people are still affected. So we were able, going back to Jeffrey, we were able to deliver the camper, and I've never seen a grown man cry as much as Jeffrey did in my entire life. This man was truly, truly grateful for everything that anybody, not just us, not just the random strangers, that donated the RV, not just the random people that bought the stuff that sent in the RV. He was truly thankful for anybody that had gave his family any attention, even me playing with his little autistic daughter. He was like, most people just count her out. He was like, so thank you for paying it. this man was so appreciative of anything that anybody had done for him. And I see that I see that common thing in almost everybody that we have helped. And it's so crazy because you go in and you tell people, we're going to help you. What do you need? They tell us. And the most common thing that I hear when we leave is, hey, if you ever need anything, just let me know. And the crazy thing is I truly think if I called Jeffrey or I called, Warren in Barnersville, or I called Courtney, or I called, all these people that we help, and I said, hey, I need help, I honestly think they would come.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably true. What's fascinating about this, though, too, is that you put this together on the fly. I mean, there are nonprofits and government agencies that have been around for decades that probably didn't react and help people as quickly as you did. But you and all of these other volunteers, people just coming together saying, hey, here's a camper. Somebody can use it. That's truly special that you were able to do that and do it so quickly and be able to help people so fast.
Yeah, I think the power of social media is amazing. I think just having favor with people is also amazing. I think God had a lot of work in this, because the cool thing is I don't own campers, but apparently I know people who do. And
you probably never knew you knew that many people with campers, did you?
I know a lot of people, but I didn't know they had campers.
Right.
I also tell people I don't own helicopters, but one of my clients actually has 10 helicopters. They run Smoky Mountain Scenic Tours here in the Smokies. And I was like, hey, we need to drop some supplies at places like Black Mountain where people are not being able to get in. Can we use your choppers? Absolutely. So they started their own GoFundMe, and people just started using their hub as a donation, and they literally flew every single day dropping supplies. So I just think it's amazing of the people that, like you said, I didn't know this, or maybe I did know. And the one thing I will tell you is I am not afraid to ask anybody for anything, because I always look at it. The only thing they can tell me is no. And right. I'm not asking out of selfishness, or nor am I asking out of, just a need to be like, hey, look at me, or even, out of sync with, what's going on in the world, right? It's always a very specific need that I'm asking for. And so I'm just grateful because, yeah, I could do a lot on my own, but as my pastor says, we are so much stronger together.
Yeah. Wow. Let's talk about one of the stories that people had heard was that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, was slow to help people. What did you see on the ground?
Well, you can get me really fired up with this one. I'm just going to cry. Okay. No, I'm not going to cry anymore. But you can get me really fired up with this one. So it took 3 to 4 weeks for FEMA to actually hit the ground. And that's so frustrating to me when you go into these communities and the things that people aren't talking about. The devastation. And it's they say, oh, well, we lost, a couple hundred people. It's a lot more than that. Thankfully, I did not have to witness some of the things that some of my friends seen, but some of my friends, oh my goodness, the horrific things that they actually witnessed with their own eyes are things that people have nightmares about. And so when you hear those stories from people that and you sit there and you think, we are the United States, right? We are the country that people come to when they are in need, right? We give lavishly to other countries. And I will be the first to say that I am a humanitarian at heart. I love other countries. I love other peoples. I love culture. I will be the first one to go and serve at a random country that I don't even speak their language to do crazy things that people think is stupid, right? Because something sparked in my heart to go help these people, and I just go. But it's very frustrating when we have so much money and we clearly pay taxes, and there's a lot of things that we give the government that we do not want to help our own. And it's very frustrating when you go in and you're like, okay, where is our government? Now, I'm not saying that they did not come. And last week, I actually went over and asked a lot of questions, because there's a lot of things that you hear. There's a lot of things that you assume. And I didn't want to speak for the North Carolina community in a way that, may not be true. And they did tell me, that it is true that it was 3 to 4 weeks before they got there. There were some National Guard that did show up within about a week. But the frustrating thing to me is it's here. There is anywhere in the U.S. that you can hop on a plane and be to that location within hours, right? So my question to the government would be, why? Why did it take that long to get there when there are hundreds, if not thousands of people that lost their lives, that were in destitute and desperate situations? Why did it take the American people to come together to fix a situation and come up with solutions when our government is here? So yes, it took a lot longer than what people think. And the crazy thing is someone commented on a TikTok that I'd made of Jeffrey yesterday, and they said, this is not true. You need to check your facts. And I'm like, this is true. I was there yesterday. We still have hundreds of thousands of people in tents. We still have hundreds of thousands of people without power, without water. Asheville, the city of Asheville, cannot use water right now other than to flush their toilets. And we don't know when that's going to change because it's so contaminated, right? So I talked to a young Army guy that was actually serving at Big Ivy Community Center. And he told me, he said, ma'am, and I was like, I am not that old. And he said, ma'am, my family was actually personally affected by the flood. He said, and we couldn't come without orders. And my mouth just dropped. And he said, we have been wanting to come. He said, they sent us here for a week. He was like, a week's not going to do anything. And he said, I called my boss and asked, could we stay longer? And that it almost dumbfounded me how that our National Guard was having to beg for orders to come and serve their people. I mean, that's what they signed up for, right? And they just can't leave their post. And so when I heard that, man, I got fired up because it's so frustrating. Even if we didn't pay taxes, even if this wasn't part of the plan, right? It should be. And so then the government, so I interviewed a bunch of people last week, and FEMA, they're like, yeah, they offered us $750 if you filled out the paperwork correctly. And it was at random who got accepted. I had people that lost everything they owned that did not get approved by FEMA. And I had people that didn't lose anything that they owned, and they were without power for a couple of days, and they got the $750. But to me, okay, how are you coming up with that, right? What is your criteria to meet? But then also, you're going to give these people that lost everything they owned $750 and a 30-day hotel stay. Well, the crazy thing is the 30-day hotel stay, almost everyone got approved for that if they applied. But the hotels, there was no hotels. These places that I'm serving are in the middle of the mountains that if you didn't know that they existed. So with that being said, where are these people going to go? And one person said, yeah, I got approved, but the closest hotel to me that they approved was 5 hours away. Wow. And I work. So these people are living in tents, or some of them, and they're still trying to go to work, take care of their children. And I understand there's a lot of people, there's a lot of devastation. It takes time to go around. So I'm not saying that FEMA wasn't there. It just took a lot longer than I feel personally it should have. And I think if I feel that if it took that long to get there, I couldn't imagine how these people that are in these situations, how long that felt, right? Because when you are in destitute, a day feels like a year feels like 10 years. And so that is really, really frustrating to know that the help that was offered was very little. They have offered to come in and buy some, people's land that was unusable, and so the people or usable. And a lot of people did sell out already because their land is literally, a creek now or a river now. So, but the thing is that I heard this morning from some of our people over at Big Ivy that some of the people that sold out, they still had a mortgage, right? So they don't have a house, but they still have a mortgage. They didn't have flood insurance because they didn't live in a flood zone. Mm-hmm. So the money that FEMA gave them did not even cover the mortgage that they still owe. And then the thing that frustrated me so much about FEMA when we got there, these people that could apply, they didn't even know they could apply. You know why? Because they didn't have cell phone service or internet for over an hour away from where they got hit. So how are they going to even know that they can apply? Okay, well then if they can apply, how are they going to apply? They probably don't know their banking information. They probably lost their cell phone and their computers in the flood itself. And then if we even got them to a place that had Starlink, which there was a few places set up, then it's like, how can you educate them on how it needs to be filled out? We did have some lawyers that came in pro bono and helped educate these people. But the issue is one issue leads to another. And that was more frustrating than anything, just for people, the American people that wasn't on the ground, to realize that, yeah, FEMA, it could be great, but it's not the best solution. And they were actually, in a lot of situations, causing more harm than help. There was a community center in Asheville that opened up its doors and said, hey, you guys can come in and have free showers. Well, then FEMA showed up and said, yeah, that's going to cause a health hazard. So you're going to need to wear flip-flops to take a shower. And this is a true story. So a realtor, she went and bought I think 18,000 pair of the disposable flip-flops that you would get when you get your pedicures, and drop them off there. And I'm sitting there thinking, that is insane. These people just want to be clean, and FEMA was causing an issue with just a shower. So I'm not saying that they didn't help some people and that they wasn't there for some people, but when you are an agency that your standards are to help people, and instead of helping people, you hurt the situation, that's an issue.
Yeah, I would say so. And we see those kinds of barriers. That's what this show's about, is trying to break down those kinds of barriers to helping people, their government imposed barriers. What's been the biggest takeaway from helping these communities? What do you think that they're still in need of? What are they in need of now?
The biggest takeaway from helping these communities is, honestly, I think we could do this without the government. And I know that is insane, but the people that I noticed that were helping did not have government agency badges on. Now, it's sad that we have to rely on each other, but it's also amazing that the American people are like, you know what? We'll just do this on their own. The people that were creating roads, it was random people with their own backhoes and their own bulldozers and their own trucks coming in. Like I said, yeah, there were a few National Guard there at the beginning, but it was so much devastation that we needed everybody to pitch in. So the big takeaway is that, yes, I think the American people figured out really fast here that, hey, if we wait on the government to come, we're going to be waiting for a long time. So let's just do it on our own.
Right. Well, if people want to help, Tonya, where's the best place for them to contact you?
Yeah. So right now, the big need, we still need a ton of campers. We need some type of shelter. So I'm working with a lot of organizations that are building tiny homes. We're having some issues with certain counties that if you don't have your own land, then you can't have a tiny home, or you can't have a camper, which is kind of insane because, that means that these people are still sleeping on the ground. So right now, shelter for people is still a huge thing. We've got a lot of winter clothes, blankets, portable heaters, things of that nature. Most places are good on food and water. The amazing thing about the American people is that very soon people come in to the point where they were saying, hey, we don't need any more of this. And they were turning people away. So every need in every community changes on a daily basis. So people can reach out to me. It's just Tonya Damron Photography on all social medias. We're working on, like I said, getting our nonprofit stuff, but they can see everything that we've been doing on there. And I would just say, reach out to us. Things change daily. Reach out to someone that you may know on the ground, because their community actually may need something different than my community's need. Yeah.
So best thing people can do if they want to help is to reach out to you at that, like on social media, on Facebook, or is there an email address they can send? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, info at Tonya, Tonya Damron, DAMRON.com. That's my email.
Okay.
They have any questions? If they don't want to go through me, this is the big thing I've been telling people. If you want to give, I would not recommend giving to any national organization. I would find someone that you know that's a random Joe or random Jane that's had their feet in the mud in North Carolina or East Tennessee. Ask them what they need and help them, because with large organizations, I'm not saying that they do not have a purpose and they serve a purpose, but the thing is those organizations, they have a platform and they have avenues that they have to go through, right? It comes in from the top and it goes down from there. And so if you give examples to the American Red Cross, again, they do a lot of good work, but it does have to go through avenues. It does have to get approved. That money does not always go directly to the people because there's other things that have to be considered before it gets to the people. If you give me $100 and you say, hey, I want this to go to Sam in North Carolina that lives at 123 Street, then it can actually be given to Sam at 123 Street to do whatever Sam needs. Or, hey, I need you to take blankets to this person. So I would say find someone that's already working on the ground, even if it's not me, and connect with them.
All right. Well, Tonya, thanks for coming on. Thanks for telling the story. But most importantly, just thanks for seeing this as your mission in life, that God's given you these wonderful talents and blessings. And so you're going to use that to glorify Him, certainly, but also to help other people. And so thank you for doing that. You've been a blessing to, I'm sure, many, probably thousands of people in those affected areas. So thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, you are absolutely welcome. I could not see doing life any other way at this point. I think once you start doing it, it's just a way of life. It's not even anything you don't even think about it anymore. It's not anything special. You're just like, hey, you're going to wake up, we're going to do work, and then we're going to go do some more work. And it just becomes a way of life. So it is such an honor to be able to say yes to what God's called and to just be the dots. I've been telling everybody that I'm just the dots, right? I don't have helicopters, but I know someone who does. I don't have RVs, but I know someone who does. I don't have $1 billion in the bank, but hey, I might know someone who does. So I will happily be the dots that connects one person to the other to make a resolution. Yeah.
Well, Tonya, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And just such great work. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Well, look, the American Potential Podcast, always working on stories just like this that will inspire you, that will inform you. And the best way to stay connected to us is by liking and subscribing to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, on Instagram, and on YouTube. And look, this is, I talked about this a little bit while we were interviewing Tonya, but this is the passion that you see from the American people, from good people who care, who want to reach out and help their fellow neighbor when they're in need. And we see that. And government has its place. There's no doubt about that. But the greatest thing about this country is its people and how they can step up to a challenge like this and do everything they can to help out. I hope that you will do that in your community as well. Thanks for listening and watching.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.